PC, Dave back with you, and this is my response to Freddybigstar's 1978 thread. Now I'm doing something which I haven't done so far, and I'm actually filming this on Friday before, so I still don't know as yet what Freddy's 10 choices will be, but I just saw Chris John Coltrane 78's video, which he actually uploaded today for 78 in anticipation of Fred's video, which he's been, I presume will be up tomorrow on Saturday. I will leave it until Freddy's is up before I upload this one. So before I get on to 78, just very briefly, two that I actually forgot to show on the 77 segment. Ultravox's self-titled debut album, fantastic slice of synth punk, produced by Brian Eno. No, this is not the Mijur Ultravox. This is Ultravox's first incarnation with John Fox as lead singer. It's a great slice of J.G. Ballard influenced electro punk. The other one, which I kind of meant to show, but ended up not being left out, is Bo Hansen's music inspired by Watership Down, which also came out in 77. So, okay, let's flake straight into 78, and just before I show my top 10, there's quite a few albums which I've left out because I only have them on CD. Devo's Are We Not Men, We Are Devo, Patti Smith, Easter. Yeah, there's a few that, you know, I've decided I'm not going to show any CDs, but just as 78 was a kind of really when kind of post-punk started hitting in, and it was really a period where 7-inch singles and 12 inches started to come to the fore. Now, none of these count as full-length albums, so I'm just going to briefly show them just as a kind of an indication of the kind of things. Now, this was one of a string of very influential singles that came out in 78, The Normal, Warm Leatherette, and TVOD. It was the very first release on the Mute label by Daniel Miller, and this is a highly influential synth punk single, which was released in 78. This is not an original, by the way, this is a reissue. Also in 78 saw the first release by the Human League, Circus of Death, and Being Boiled, rather, is the A side. Being Boiled and Circus of Death. Another highly influential electronic record which came out of Sheffield, England, and this is a first pressing. Also from Sheffield, Cabaret Voltaire with the Extended Play EP, which came out on Rough Trade. Yeah, so also another couple of influential singles were Throbbing Gristle United and what's the name? Private Plane, Thomas Lear, Private Plane, both of which I don't have, but there was a whole string of these kind of independently released singles. Also, now this does not count as an album because it's technically a 12-inch EP, but also a band from Manchester called Joy Division released this EP. An Ideal for Living. This is not an original because originals are extremely rare. This is a reissue which was given to me as VCLT by my good friend Gimmie, Earl of Suave. and this was released for Record Store Day a few years ago. But yes, highly influential. It actually was originally released as a 7-inch, but then reissued as in 12-inch form. But yeah, we will be hearing more from them in '79. Okay, so onto my top 10 album list for '78. Starting off, staying in a post-punk direction, a band who came out of Cleveland, which is in Ohio, I think, Cleveland, Ohio. Pere Ubu. This was their, I believe, was this their second album? I don't know. I think this has come after Modern Dance. I think it did. Yeah. So, as the title kind of indicates, there is a bit of a double influence in here, but it's post punk, but it takes in so many other influences. There's so much kind of weird stuff going on here. The song titles, Navi, On the Surface, Caligari's Mirror, they don't really give you much of an indication of what the songs are going to sound like. David Thomas is one of those mavericks, musical mavericks. I had the pleasure of meeting him 3 years ago after a gig. Pere Ubu played a gig here in Cork. I just briefly spoke to him for like a minute or so. I didn't have this at the time, but I picked up their album, which they had out, at the time of that tour. Jesus, the lady from Shanghai, and I got it signed by him. Brief chat with him, interesting. Yeah, he's quite a character. Yeah, so that's Pere Ubu, and that was a highly influential album that came out that year. Staying with post-punk, Siouxsie and the Banshees. Siouxsie and the Banshees, yeah, they're kind of part of the initial wave of UK punk dating back to '76. Part of that, the what was called the Bromley contingent, hung around with the Sex Pistols and so on. But it wasn't until '78 that they released their first album, and really, it's kind of it kind of transcends the whole school of '77 punk. This is really post-punk, very influential on the goth movement, which would come later in the late '70s and early '80s. Sorry, it's called a Scream. Did I say that? No, I don't. No, I didn't mention it. No, it's called the Scream. So it's their debut album by Siouxsie and the Banshees. And now this is the American pressing, which means it has the single Hong Kong Garden, which didn't appear on the UK version, or I think the other European versions. Yeah, this is a great album. Just the Hong Kong Garden. I know it wasn't on the UK one, but that's a fantastic single. And there's a cover of Helter Skelter as well, which is just great. And yeah, it's really kind of one of a string of really influential albums that came out in '78. Kind of, from the rubble of punk, which kind of exploded the previous year, you started getting yeah, a lot of interesting kind of stuff coming out in the wake of it. Now, we have a band who were kind of around before punk, but kind of, as they went on, they became kind of part of the post-punk thing, and they again began to heavily influence music of the coming decade. Again, showed them in the '77 update as well. Talking Heads with more songs about buildings and food, and this is one of the first of 3 albums which was produced by Brian Eno. So it has that Eno imprint on it, and so yeah, the Take Me to the River, which is really really interesting cover version of the Al Green song. This may not be their best album, but it's certainly one of the top albums of 1978, which is why I'm including it. Okay, now I know Kate Bush released 2 albums in '78. I was very torn about whether to include either both of them or the Kick Inside, but I decided in the end. And there's so much other. They'll probably. I imagine a lot of people will probably show either one or both of them, but there's just so much other stuff that I wanted to show that I reluctantly left them out. But anyway, moving on. Now moving on to, well, I suppose you could call it prog Canterbury, but with a kind of with something of an ambient vibe. Steve Hillage, Green. This was VCLT as well from Kevin Doctor Strangely Strange. There is a green vinyl version as well, but this is regular black vinyl. So yeah, this is great, spacey, ambient influence. This album would go on again go on to be highly influential in the decades ahead on ambient and electronic music, on the likes of the Orb, for instance. They're huge Steve Hillage fans, and he did collaborate with them quite a bit. But Green, one of a really good string of albums he released in the kind of latter half of the '70s. Try to get through these fairly quick. Now, staying with a Canterbury connection. National Health. This is their debut self-titled album, proving that Canterbury progressive rock was not yet dead. It wasn't all punk or post-punk in '78. Yeah, so National Health, band formed by including Dave Stewart of Egg, and Alan Gowan. Yeah, this is a fantastic debut album. Just the musical virtuosity displayed on this is just amazing. It's just completely at odds with what was kind of kind of the general trend for '78. But this is just one of the top 10 albums of that year, so it rightfully takes its place on the list. So National Health, self-titled debut album. Okay, now this is another one which probably will be shown by a lot of people. I was kind of, for which reason I was kind of not sure whether, but anyway, to hell with it. I couldn't leave it out in the end. Kraftwerk, their Mensch Maschinen, the man machine, and they just continued. Previous year they released Trans Europe Express, and they followed it up the following year with this cracker of an album. Again, just an absolutely massively influential album. Yeah, the Robots, Space Lab, The Model, which would go on to be a hit single several years later, The Man Machine, and of course the visual side of the album as well, with that Russian constructivist influence. And they launched 1,000 Skinny Ties in the process. So yeah, this is an original UK album which has been nibbled a little bit on the corner there by our furry friends at some point. But yeah, rightfully taking its place in the top 10 for '78. Now moving in a completely different direction, and yeah, on to jazz and fusion. This is an album which came out on the Japo label. and this is a German trio, Contact trio, and the album is called New Marks. Um, I know I've tried pronouncing these guys' names before when I originally showed it, and I didn't have much success then, so I probably still won't. Yeah, I'm not going to bother. That just, yeah, just if, yeah, Japo, as you know, label closely influenced with, closely linked with ECM. So, uh, so very much a chamber piece, and percussion, marimba vibes, are used on this, and this is a this album is a personal favorite of mine when it comes from that kind of ECM Japo kind of thing. Um, Love this album. Completely instrumental, and kind of unusual cardboard sleeve. I think it's biodegradable, but yeah, if you like ECM or that kind of music of that scene, really this is one for you. It's a brilliant, brilliant chamber piece. This album. Or did I mention they're, yeah, they're from Germany? I think, I don't know if I did or not. Um, Staying with jazz, Jarrett. Keith Jarrett, not solo piano on this one. So on this one he has the also has Jan Garbarek, uh, Palle Danielson, and John Christensen. I don't have a whole lot of Keith Jarrett's album, so I can't really compare it too much. But I really do like this album. I mean, his piano playing is second to none. There's, I mean, the kind of interplay between him and the other three performers is fantastic on this. I know a lot of people are kind of split by Jan Garbarek, but his playing doesn't dominate too much on this. I think there's a perfect balance between the four performers on this one, and it even goes into a bit of kind of free jazz on the second last track, Mandala. So oh yeah, trying to keep this under 20 minutes, but I don't think I'm gonna succeed somehow. Now, okay. Now this is an interesting one which came out in '78. Jon Hassel, Earthquake Island. This is his second album. Jon Hassel. So how to describe this? Virtuoso trumpet player. Oh, Jesus, I must glue that actually. Fantastic cast of musicians here. So this is basically world music, kind of proto-ambient, and with a bit of a jazz. It's quite kind of a hard one to categorize, but Jon Hassel would go on to collaborate with Brian Eno. Collaborated quite a few times. There is a bit of a kind of a proto-ambient thing going on here, which brings us up to the final choice of my top 10, and that is one which I just couldn't leave out, and that is Brian Eno, Ambient One, Music for Airports. Now this is actually the only one I have to date on out of his four the four albums in this series. This is an original pressing. It's not in great condition. It is a little bit noisy, this pressing, but basically I don't think I need to go too much into this album because you're probably all familiar with it. But basically, yeah, he had done ambient albums before, but this is basically his kind of ambient manifesto, as laid out in the sleeve notes. So basically, there's contributions here from Robert Wyatt on piano, and really, yeah, this is just sublime. Strongly influenced by the French composer Satie, in his kind of, furniture music, I think he labeled it. But yeah, Eno brings that idea, just makes it his own basically, and ambient one music for airports, which is literally, which was kind of written with that in mind. Music for when you're waiting at an airport. It's like music that's kind of not meant to kind of be too intrusive, but kind of just in the background. Anyway, I'm sure you all know this already anyway, but this final one of my top 10, and no, I did not manage to keep it under 20 minutes. Beaten by the clock yet again. Okay, so I'll be throwing this up tomorrow on Saturday. Don't know, kind of trying to guess which ones Freddie will show, but I'd say possibly maybe a few in there. But we'll see anyway. But anyway, for anybody watching, I highly recommend you check out Freddie's ongoing 1970s Gimmie 10 series. Don't know if it'll go into the 80s, but it's a highly enjoyable series so far. So thanks very much for watching, and have a great